Ho, 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 and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint podcast number 274, recorded live on Monday, December 21st, 2015. I am your host, the very jolly Todd Klindt. And while we're getting ready for the podcast and get everything excited, I need to tell you, I'm very excited about Rackspace, my employer. So make sure you go out as you're finishing up your holiday shipping or holiday shopping and just can't find that hard to buy for person, can't find the thing to buy them. You can buy them SharePoint at Rackspace. Go out to sharepoint.rackspace.com and see what you've got out there. Or if you've got somebody on your list, they already have SharePoint, you can go to rackspace.com/Microsoft and maybe pick them up some other Microsoft products from Rackspace. But they make great stocking stuffers, great white elephant gifts, all that kind of stuff, all the great Microsoft products at Rackspace. And of course, while you're out there on the internet, you can hit me up on all the places that I live on the internet, toddklindt.com/blog and Twitter at Todd Klindt, email todd.klindt@rackspace.com. I'm just all over the place. So while you're out there, make the best of the internet and hit me up on all those places. Okay, on to the next part. There we go. Get that. You'll notice I've got the monitor back behind me again. I've got everything resituated over here. I'm not going to bore you with that, but I got a new work machine, and then there was the old work machine, and I wanted monitors. One of the ways that you demonstrate your importance at Rackspace is the number of monitors you have. And as I was ordering a new machine, I felt obligated to try to slip in another monitor to raise my level of importance at Rackspace, and it worked. So I've got a shiny new monitor here sitting next to my less shiny older monitor here. And got my TV on the wall, these monitors here. I'm very important. Unfortunately, since I work from home, nobody can see how important I am, except for you folks. But I've already got you convinced. You already know how important I am. But we got the new monitor there, so I'll be taking advantage of that. I was missing it for a week. Was a little nervous. I missed it. I missed looking over my shoulder. Well, I missed looking into the camera and looking over my own shoulder. And it's all very, with the mirrors and the magnets and the magic. I don't know how any of that stuff works. But for other production notes, this is the last show of the year. I'm going to be traveling next Monday, and Shane will also be traveling next Monday, so we will have nobody to fill in. There will be no December 28th episode of this podcast. And even if somebody was around, I'm going to be gone all week. I wouldn't have any time to produce it and all that. So you get next week off. Go do whatever you do when you're not doing this. I don't know what's gonna be going on, but no podcast next week. But here's something that you can do to keep yourself busy if you are looking for things to do on the 28th. You can go give some money to charity. So last Friday on the 18th was Lori's birthday, and we designate the month between Lori's birthday on the 18th and my birthday a month from today, the 21st, as our annual charity drive here at the Todd Klindt podcast. And so Lori has a page up for that. You can go to pointgowan.com/TKCharity. Here's the way this charity drive works. It's the bestest, funnest charity drive there is out there. I don't care where you give your money to. We've got a list of charities on the side if you don't have a favorite charity. But if you do, you can give to your favorite charity, one of our favorite charities, whatever. Just right now between last Friday and my birthday, give some money to charity, help somebody somewhere. When you do that, there's a link on that page at pointgowan.com/TKCharity where you can send Lori an email or fill out a thing and tell her how much you gave. And we're keeping a running tally to see how much money my podcast encourages people to give over that month period. Last year, we gave nearly $2,500, and I thought that was pretty cool. Every year, it's been a little bit more, and we've kind of been hitting it harder the last couple of years. I didn't want to feel too preachy, so I didn't hit it so hard a couple of years ago. But the last couple of years, we've been hitting it hard. Last year, we got nearly $2,500, really close. And back in the old days, one of the things I used to do to drive donations, was to match the money that you guys gave. And that worked really well till you guys started giving money that was measured in the thousands and not the hundreds or the tens. And so I thought, Lori's been putting a lot of hard work into this. We almost hit $2,500 last year. I thought I would encourage things by asking folks or, bringing it up and telling folks that this year I will match dollar for dollar whatever amount of money that Lori, raises or keeps track of. So imagine my surprise when we're only like 3 or 4 days into this whole mess this year, a week tops. And I look today and there's already over $1,600 already. And we haven't really even hit it that hard yet. So when I got permission from my wife to do this, I didn't think it was going to be quite that big. And so here it is. Daniel Glenn in the chat room. What a generous soul. He has just pledged to give $50,000. So there you go. You heard it here. We've got it. I'm going to take a screenshot of this. Don't anybody move. All right, there we go. We've got it recorded. So I will expect to see that receipt coming from Tennessee, Daniel. But anyway, if you'd like to contribute to that, again, this isn't for any pet charity of mine. It's just those of us in the SharePoint community and the SharePoint industry and all that. We're a giving sort. We're probably in pretty good shape compared to a lot of folks out there. And this time of year, I just like to think about that and like to help some folks out that need the help. So if you think about it, go to pointgowan.com/TK charity and give some money out there. And then every dollar you donate, I will donate as well. Okay, so as you guys have probably noticed, the year is winding down. Christmas is almost upon us. We've got 4 days till Christmas, and I'm going to try to get this thing produced pretty quickly, get it out early this week. 4 days until Christmas. The year's almost over. And last year, Shane and I did kind of an end-of-the-year recap thing. And I like that. That was fun. Everybody does it. It's really a crutch because I haven't had to work for the last week. I was burning off my PTO, and this is a good way for me to get content without actually having to work for it. So I can see why they do this at the end of the year. But Shane and I were going to do that, and then he got busy tonight and wasn't able to. So I thought I would just kind of talk about some things that happened over the year. Now, this is not everything that happened over the year. As with any list of things that you see anywhere, you're always enraged that something didn't make it. And this list will be no doubt exactly that same way. You will not be disappointed in the things that I forget on this list. But basically what I did is I just went through the notes for all of the podcasts that I did this year and just kind of pulled out the things that I was interested in. So one thing that I do want to mention is I think before this podcast, I think I did 43 podcasts. So I think this will make lucky number 44 this year. Not too shabby considering there's 52 weeks-ish in the year. Last year, I looked back, I did 46 last year. So we're keeping it up there. This is one of those things that I remember. Okay, so Lori says this will be 45. All right, I trust you. That's one of those things a couple years ago, I was listening to one of Scott Hanselman's podcasts, and he was talking about how consistency was important when you're doing podcasts. You want people to remember and keep going out there. And that was when I really decided to get dedicated and do more podcasts. And again, we're close. We're within 10 of the year, and that's vacations, holidays, things like that. So we will keep that up for next year, hopefully. But that's where this list has come from. Just I went through the list of things I talked about in the last 40 some podcasts, and that's what we're going to talk about. So one of the first topics, and these are mostly in no order whatsoever. I kind of made high level headings and then put the pieces in. So the first one I've got in my list is Windows 10. Windows 10 came out this year, and not only did Windows 10 come out this year, but there was a lot leading up to Windows 10 and a lot that has happened since Windows 10. Windows 10 was a big deal for Microsoft, and it was a big deal for a lot of reasons. One of the first things that one of the first stories that I talked about for Windows 10 this year was when Microsoft announced that Windows RT had been killed. Now, Windows RT got a bad break. I've got a Windows RT device sitting right over there, and I probably touched it and used it within the last week. Windows RT was sort of Microsoft's answer to iOS. It was an OS that ran on mobile, small devices, but was like the walled garden thing. You couldn't just drop files on it. You had to buy things from the Windows Store, things like that. I thought RT, for what it was supposed to be, was pretty good. The bad news is Microsoft marketed it poorly, and they marketed Windows RT on the Surface device and then marketed Windows 8 Pro or whatever on the Surface Pro device, and everybody was confused. So people bought these RT devices where the device physically looked like the full Windows device, and the OS looked a lot like the real OS, but except it wasn't, and some things didn't work. I think had they positioned RT better and marketed RT better, it would have been, and given it a better name. What the hell, RT? Oh my God. But this year in 2015, when they finally announced that Windows RT was dead, that they were not going to release a Windows 10 version of Windows RT. What they are doing is they are, and I don't think they've done it yet. I haven't actually paid much attention, but they did release or will release some Windows 10 pieces of it that will fit in the Windows 8.1 RT build. But RT is officially dead. It will be replaced by Windows Phone. Windows Mobile will cover those same things going forward. Another thing that we learned this year, something we've been speculating on, but we learned for a fact at the beginning of this year, was that you would be able to do an upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10. So we're used to being able to do upgrades from N-1. So you can, we expected to be able to upgrade from Windows 8.1 to Windows 10. But we were not sure if we were going to be able to upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10. And we found out this year that we did, and a whole bunch of us did it. This is important because it brings into a broader picture that we're going to talk about here in a minute on how serious, almost militant, Microsoft has gotten about updates over the last couple of years, Windows specifically, and Windows major versions as well as minor versions. Microsoft gets their nose bloodied a lot about Windows machines that have gotten compromised and been part of botnets and all kinds of horrible things. This stuff's been happening for years. Microsoft is kind of the poster child for insecure OSs. For the most part, the problems have been fixed, but Windows has a huge footprint, and a lot of Windows users do a lot of bad things like not patch their systems. And these unpatched systems are where all these exploits are getting in. If you have a well-patched system, it always never gets exploited, but people don't do that. So over the last few years, Microsoft has gotten made it harder and harder to not patch your system. And one of the things that they want to do is they want to get everybody to Windows 10. It is the most secure operating system that they've put out so far. So allowing you to upgrade from 7 to 10 was part of that process and getting you up from a mostly secure OS to the most secure OS. Then we found out later that not only will you be able to upgrade from 7 or 8 to Windows 10, you'll be able to upgrade for free for the first year. So starting in July of 2015 till July of 2016, if you have a legally licensed Windows 7 or 8 machine or 8.1, you'll be able to upgrade to Windows 10 for free. Again, part of this whole get everybody to Windows 10 because it's more secure. And that way Microsoft doesn't get made fun of as much about, compromised Windows boxes. Another thing that we saw this year that was kind of part of that, but part of some other, CI/CD kind of thing that's going on, is Microsoft introduced us this concept of rings. So the Windows 10 preview was large and was huge, and they let a lot of people get the Windows 10 preview, and then they would let you get into these different upgrade rings, the fast ring, the slow ring, things like that. And this was something that we hadn't really seen before. This was the ability for you to be running the same OS and getting updates all the time, but have different machines at different patch levels, depending on how mission critical that machine was and how brave you were on the other machine. Again, this is part of Microsoft wanting to do this agile development and get updates out there and get this functionality up there as quick as possible, but also do it in such a way that people don't get upset when things get broken, because that's what happens when you get things that are pushed out quickly. So you can be in the fast ring, the slow ring, and you can choose how quickly you update. But the important thing is that you update and that you let Microsoft update your system. And that was a big story. So another story from this is before Windows 10 came out, Microsoft released that patch that started nagging you on Windows 7 and 8.1 about upgrading to Windows 10, and downloaded a bunch of bits in the background and things like that. So we've had Windows 10 for 5 months now, and that has only gotten more aggressive. There was a time period where even if you said no, it would upgrade your machine automatically. I think now the patch says upgrade tonight or upgrade later. There is no cancel. They really want you on Windows 10. Of course, there's support issues with supporting old OSs, but from a security standpoint, they want you on Windows 10. Something fierce. So that's kind of been a running theme. I don't cover it specifically in tonight's podcast, but Office 2016 does the same thing. There's preview rings. They're squeaking updates out. They really want your stuff to be locked down tight and secure. One thing that was specifically absent from this year was Windows Server 2016. We had initially thought that it was going to come out later this year, and then we found out that it's really not going to come out till next year. And I think the last word is it's going to come out next year, but it's going to be late next year. But Windows Server 2016 is obviously the server version of Windows 10, and they're putting a lot of time into it. I suspect a lot of it has to do with things like containers that are coming out. There's just a lot of big changes under the hood, and that's taken a while. So if you're excited about the new server OS, and I know I am, you're gonna have to wait till later next year. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about while we're talking about Windows is other Windows devices. Now, I don't remember when my whole problem started, but as you all know, I have a bit of a problem when it comes to buying Windows tablets, like this one, and like this one, and oh, hey, here's one like this one. So the Windows tablets, and a couple that aren't within arm's reach. Lori in the chat room says I need a 12-step plan for tablet purchases. That's probably not too far from the truth. So I do make use of a lot of these Windows tablets, and that was partially from when Windows 8 came out. There were no inexpensive Windows 8 devices. So Windows 8 did all this great touch-friendly thing and had the start menu and the Metro UI that we can't call the Metro UI. But I couldn't really talk myself into buying any of these devices and spending, $400 or $500 on them for an OS that I just wasn't sure about. So then when Windows 8.1 came out, Microsoft released all these tablets. They mostly had the same, specs, the Intel 3736 chipset, that kind of stuff. And I just ended up kind of going overboard. But it was a lot of fun, and I have tablets everywhere for all kinds of things. But anyway, this year, since I'm, up to my elbows here in tablets, there was some other new Windows devices that came out. And one of the first ones that I bought was this little HDMI stick computer. Now, Intel announced these at CES, but I had noticed that before CES, I had seen some of these on Alibaba, which is one of the marketplaces out of China. And this little guy, for the most part, has the same specs under the hood as some of these cheaper tablets do. The same chipset, couple gig of RAM, 16 or 32 gig of storage, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that business. And this thing was like 80, 90 bucks, I forget. So I ran right out to Alibaba and ordered it quick like a bunny, and then waited for like 3 months for it to take the slow boat over from China, plugged it in, and I talked about this at length in a previous podcast, but this little guy, when he showed up on my doorstep, showed up with Windows 8.1 that had already been infected by a virus. And of course, like an idiot, I jack it right into my Wi-Fi and let it go to town. Fortunately, no machines were harmed in that stupidity, but it was just a funny story. And I guess you can never be too careful when you order things for cheap on the internet. And Jeff in the chat room is asking if the virus was free. Yes, there was no extra charge for the virus whatsoever. They graciously provided that for free, and that was nice of them, because normally to get a virus on a Windows machine, you have to go out and cruise some websites and go to some sketchy places on the internet. But they saved me all that trouble. I just had it already, and it already had the viruses on it, so I didn't have to worry about any of that. But that came out, and there was a bunch of those kind of devices. Another one that came out, and I think it was maybe Daniel in the chat room that first talked about it, was the Kangaroo PC, which is a little better spec and a little larger box, both box and the computer itself. But this thing was $99. It's got a little better processor in it. It's got fingerprint reader, all kinds of crazy things like that. That was another Windows device that came out. Another Windows device that came out that I think a lot of people were surprised about was the Raspberry Pi 2. Now, the Raspberry Pi has been out for a few years now, and this is a cheap little computer. I think that costs like $30. Normally, people were reduced to running something like Ubuntu or Raspbian or one of those Linux-based OSs on it. But this year, as part of the Windows 10 push and the Internet of Things push, Microsoft released a version of Windows 10 for this little guy. And there's a bunch of updates to that. When I first put it on, you couldn't do much with it. It is free if you get the Windows 10 Internet of Things edition. But you plug this in, hook it up to a monitor, and it shows you your IP address. You can get in there and do some PowerShell against the program against it, and just run all kinds of crazy things. You can hook up sensors and lights and motors and bells and whistles and mouse traps and all that to those little devices. They're $30 a pop. So there's just a lot of great little Windows devices out there. And Another device I wanted to give a shout out to, though it's not running Windows, but I just didn't know where else to talk about it, was the band. So this year was the year that I got a band, and then I got another band, and I really liked the band. And so Jeremy Taylor in the chat room saying, "Yeah, the kangaroo, we have them everywhere here. look out your window, see kangaroos as far as the eye can see." I think we're talking about a different kangaroo. These kick a lot less and smell way better. But so I got the band. I initially was on the fence about the band. I've got a Fitbit, so I've got that for my fitness tracking things. And I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of fitness that needs to be tracked. But the Fitbit was good. I liked, the community aspect of it and the fact that it keeps me active. So when the band came out, I wasn't sure if I would buy one or not, and I was able to get one for cheap. So I got it, loved it, except for the design. It's rigid, it's scary, it hurts, it's just mean looking. And then a couple of weeks ago, I got the new Band 2, which I love to tears. Can't recommend it highly enough. I really like the band. So the band is less a watch. It's not really a smart watch. It fits firmly in the fitness band arena because I do wear a watch and the band. But the band does happen to tell time. So I like the thing about the band. So Jeremy in the chat room saying it seems bulky. It is not bulky. If you talk to anybody who has a Band 1, for sure, the Band 2, oh, so smooth and silky, just so comfortable, yeah, it's not bad whatsoever. Matter of fact, the thing that put me over the edge on buying a Band 2 was I tried somebody else's on. I tried it on, it just fit like a glove. And so, yeah. But the Band 2 does all the stuff the Band 1 did. It's got a better display. Another thing that you can't display very well is it's got the little thing like the Apple Watch does where it shuts the display off until you twist your wrist to look at the time. It's got a thing now with the update a couple of weeks ago where if it detects you're sitting too long, it will buzz you and tell you to get up and move. There are some new tiles for it. I'm a huge fan of this. I really like the band. If I had to do it all over again, I would buy another band. It's been good. So that doesn't technically run Windows, but it's more of these little devices that run Windows. And if you're not a Windows Phone user, there is an iOS and an Android version of Microsoft Health that will hook up with this as well. So if you're on the fence about getting a Band 2, I recommend getting it. This week on Facebook, two of my Facebook friends, Christina Wheeler and Paul Learning, both were asking about it. I recommended they both upgrade to the Band 2. They both posted a couple days ago saying how much they love them. So 100% of the people that I told to do it on Facebook loved it. That's just science. You can't argue with that. That is straight up, statistics. 100% of the people. So it was a good year for that kind of stuff. So speaking of the band and the Windows Phone, 2015 will also go down. Get a little teary. I'm going to talk about this. Okay. 2015 is also the year that I gave up on Windows Phone, and it was hard. So I've got my Windows Phone over here. Oh, and it's not charged because I haven't used it in a while. But last year I got a Lumia 830. And I like the Lumia 830. It did a lot of good things, a lot of Lumia Windows Phone-ish things. I really liked it. But a bunch of things finally wore me down, and I gave up on Windows Phone and switched back to Android. Number one was I started seeing the preview versions of Windows 10 for the phone. And yes, I get it. It was a preview, but it just was not a pleasant experience. And the upgrade process was unpleasant. And there were just things about it that I didn't like where things were going. The first beta wouldn't let you have multiple tiles for mailboxes and just all kinds of things. It was just bad. It was a bad thing. So I kind of had a bad taste in my mouth in playing with the Windows Phone 10 betas. But I did go out and I bought a second Windows Phone so I could put the beta on that because there was no way I was leaving the beta on my daily driver. So that happened. In April, I had a chance to go over to the SharePoint Evolution Conference in London, and my wife came over for a few days and we did a bunch of touristy things. And what really pushed me over the edge was everywhere we went, everything we did, when we went to like Churchill's War Room and when we bought our tickets to the Tube and all that, everything had an iOS app and everything had an Android app and nothing had a Windows Phone app. And it's not a huge deal, but it just got old. We got this ticket book that had the tickets for different things in it. And of course, it came with an Android app, and my wife loaded it on her phone, and there's a map that shows where everything was. I had nothing for my Windows phone. It was just death by 1,000 cuts. And so I just finally gave up, and I went back to Android. And I'll be honest, I hate Android. My phone is fine. I've got a Galaxy S5, and it's okay. I mean, it's nothing great, nothing spectacular. Kind of a run-of-the-mill Android phone. Does the wireless charging, so I'm glad about that. But I hate Android. Everything that Android does, the Windows Phone and Android both do, Windows Phone does better. Better notifications, better network management. I mean, just everything. But there's just no apps on Windows Phone. And I finally have apps now on my Android phone. And what makes it worse is I'd only been on Windows Phone for a little over a year and a half or something like that. So I could still remember having apps on Android. So I mean, it's just, again, it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's things like my garage door opener I can access from the internet. No app for Windows Phone. Web page doesn't work. I got an Amazon Echo, and you got to set that up with an app. No app for Windows Phone. The web page won't work. Had to use my wife's Android phone. It was just a bunch of things like that. It just got to me. So I'm hoping that at some point when Windows Phone 10 comes out and they figure out how to either allow Windows or Apple, iOS apps or something, because they've said now they're not going to do the Android apps, which just broke my heart to pieces. But hopefully I'll be able to go back to it, because I am convinced that Windows Phone is the best Windows OS or the best phone OS, but I just couldn't do it for my daily driver. Just gave up too many things. But despite the fact that I abandoned Windows Phone, believe it or not, Microsoft plowed on with Windows Phone, went ahead and released a new version of the OS, and I think it's done. I think new phones get it, the RTM version of Windows Phone 10, and starting next month, the different tiers of phones are going to be getting the upgrade over the wire. So they kept on keeping on. Also, Microsoft released some new sexy Windows phones, the Lumia 950 and the 950 XL. I had a chance to see them. The hardware looks amazing. It does the continuum thing where you can hook it up to a monitor, a mouse, and all that. There's just no apps. So I don't know. Hopefully next year, though. And the other thing that Microsoft had this year is even less market share than the year before, which I thought was mathematically impossible. But no, turns out it wasn't. So sad about that. Hopefully next year I'll be able to jump back in. All right, so SharePoint also had some things that happened this year. 2015 was the year that we got our first glimpse of SharePoint 2016. We first saw it at the Ignite conference in May in Chicago. More on that later. And then we started getting some betas. We got a beta here a couple of weeks ago, and that was all very exciting. We were all just chomping at the bit for that. And we found out that the expected due date for our little bundle of joy, SharePoint 2016 RTM, is sometime, I think what they said, first quarter or first half of next year. So it's getting close. We're gonna be at a new version of SharePoint to sink our teeth into. Along with that, less exciting, they did drop a couple of months ago a new Office 2016 client, so Word, Excel, Outlook, all that kind of stuff. I got them. They're okay. Nothing crazy, nothing to write home about, but they're out there. But again, they're doing that more rapid patching, the different rings and all that, so it's got that. We did find out a couple of weird things. Number one, we did find out definitively there would be no SharePoint Designer 2016. And hearts wept everywhere over that information. So the no SharePoint Designer 2016, which was fine because you couldn't really design with SharePoint Designer anymore. So they were going to have to call it something else. So we found out that SharePoint Designer 2016 was dead. And despite the fact that we were positive the InfoPath was dead, we did find out that InfoPath 2013 lives on. You can download InfoPath 2013 for free, and that will continue to work for a while because Microsoft just hasn't decided what they're going to do with InfoPath. We did get a more focused view of what the hybrid story was going to be, and I think this was important. I think this was one of the things that really made me feel better about the future of SharePoint and about my future in SharePoint in 2015. So In 2014, we got Service Pack 1 for SharePoint 2013, and it added some federated search bits, things like that. But this year is when we got the cloud search service application, which was the thing that we really wanted, the thing that took both of our indexes and mushed them together, and all the results looked the same, and you could use everything in Delve and all that. That's what the hybrid experience we're looking for looks like. And while we got OneDrive for Business in Office 365 support last year, this year it got better to use. The clients got better. Actually, just recently the clients got better, the OneDrive for Business client. But the clients started showing up all over on our phones and our tablets and all that, where having things out in Office 365 started making more sense, and having things from our on-prem SharePoint made more sense. And so the hybrid vision got better. And another thing I'm going to talk about a little bit later is identity, which is another thing that made hybrid make more sense. So Microsoft, I think, has got a winning formula on their hands with releasing SharePoint on-prem, but making the hybrid story better. And this year really brought that into focus, and a lot of people got excited about it. And I know I was one of those that did. So, and another thing that we found out this year was Power Apps. So Power Apps just got released here a couple of weeks ago, and this is kind of the continuation of the Project Sienna stuff that they did earlier, just making it super easy for commoners like myself to build apps for Windows 10 and Windows 10 Phone and universal apps that can access things in SharePoint and things in Office 365 and things all over everywhere. They've got all that in Power Apps, and that's out now. You can download that, you can play with that, and I think that's going to be a huge thing. I haven't played with it much yet, but I think there's good potential there. My hair is doing a weird thing there. Those of you listening to the audio only podcast, you're lucky. I didn't. So in the chat room, they're saying Power Apps is not open; it's invite only. That could be. I honestly don't remember. I haven't looked at it much, but that kind of shows you the way that they're looking in the future. So speaking of getting our first taste of SharePoint 2016, the first place we got that officially this year was at Ignite. That was Microsoft's new conference, the conference to end all conferences. You and 20-some thousand of your closest friends all jammed into the McCormick Center in Chicago, learning everything there is to know about everything Microsoft has. Holy cow, that event was exhausting. And, so I presented a couple sessions there. Laura Rogers and I did a pre-conference session on OneDrive for Business. I did a session on Upgrade there as well. It was nice having everything and everybody there, but there were a lot of logistical issues. There is some obvious issues with having everybody in one place at one time. Unless you've got a shop that can just shut down, somebody's not going to get to go to the conference, and we saw a little bit of that. The other thing was the logistics of 20,000 people are tough, and Chicago is a great city. Chicago is like a 5-mile drive from here. My wife and I go to Chicago all the time. I love Chicago. I love downtown Chicago. The problem became when you're shuffling all those people around and you're giving all those people a place to sleep at night, it gets really complicated. So the McCormick Center is not within walking distance to anything. So there was no way you could walk like you could at a lot of the other conferences. And so like the night of the big vendor thing, everybody got out, 20-some thousand people all looking for bus rides back to their hotels at the same time. And all the hotels were a good 3 or 4 miles away. And it wasn't sure whether you were going to get a hotel with whoever you wanted to hang out with. And then it didn't help that it rained a lot of the days. And so it just made the social aspect of Ignite tough. The event center was huge. It made some of that tough. But Microsoft told us, hey, we're doing this. We're doing it here again next year. And there was some whining. There was some complaining. And then this October, we started hearing some rumblings that maybe there wasn't going to be an Ignite in Chicago in 2016. And sure enough, a day or two later, Microsoft announced that Ignite was moving, that it was still going to be in 2016. It was going to be later, going to be in the fall. And it was going to be in Atlanta instead of Chicago. So I'll be curious to see how that works. Tech Ed, SharePoint Conference, those kind of things have been in Atlanta before, the big World Congress Center there. And you can walk back and forth to some hotels from there. And so I'm hoping that I get one of those hotels when I go. But I think that's going to be a bigger event center. I think it's going to be generally better. So I will look forward to seeing you all at Ignite, the big one conference to have them all. And it's going to be, so they just posted in the chat room. Thank you, Jeremy Taylor, September 26th through the 30th in Atlanta. Georgia. That's the Georgia in the U.S., not the Georgia over there, over in Europe, Asia, them parts. I guess them parts too. So another big story this year was identity. I touched on that a little bit when I talked about hybrid, but this was the year I feel like identity became mature for most folks. And I talk about this because the hybrid story for SharePoint kind of depended on it, and it started to gel for us SharePoint admins, kind of what identity meant and how to manage it. Microsoft's newest tool for keeping identities from on-prem synced into Office 365 was released, and that's Azure AD Connect, and that's been a good tool. And so it's out, it's released, and it works really well. I'm a big fan of it. I've done a lot of Azure AD Connect installations and configurations, and it makes the identity piece easy, which makes the hybrid piece easy because now the identities are all in sync and your users don't have to have multiple usernames and passwords. I got so excited about it that Jason Himmelstein and I did a 3-part webcast for IT Unity on it, kind of walking you through the process, doing all those kind of things. Identity is, and we promised to do more. We haven't followed through with that, but we promise we'll do more. Identity is going to be a big deal. It's kind of a big deal now. It's going to be a really big deal next year, especially when SharePoint 2016 comes out and these hybrid workloads get serious. Identity is going to be a big deal. So keep your eye out. There's going to be some more identity news coming up. The podcast was good this year. Shane subbed for me a bunch of times. I ended up being busy a bunch of times. Doing the podcast on the road when I travel is really tough. It's tough to haul all the equipment. It's tough to find the time, the internet connection. Most of the time when I travel, it's to do something, and those some things have things going on Monday nights. Shane was graciously enough to sub for me a whole bunch of times. My apologies to you guys for having to listen to Shane a whole bunch of times. But again, it kept the consistency up. This year, also, for the first time, I brought some guests on in no particular order, or maybe in exact order. I don't remember. I brought in Bill Baer and Mark Manassi and Jeff Hicks and Kirk Evans, all friends of mine, all super smart, graceful folks, came in and talked about that. I want to do that some more. The reason that I kind of fell back from that, I've got some other people lined up. So I've got some other people who have agreed to show up that I haven't had on yet. And that's because I kept threatening to move the time and move it earlier in the day, and was not able to execute on that in 2015, but hopefully 2016 will be the year that I will be able to do that. And then once I get it back into a more reasonable time, I'll be able to have more people come on, because it's not going to be, like I start this thing at 8:30 Central, that's 9:30 Eastern. Had some folks from Europe that wanted to be on. It's like the middle of the damn day, sometime next week for those guys. So hopefully this year I'll be able to change the times. And another thing that happened this year from the podcast was the folks at CMS Wire started taking the audio from my podcast, and we talked to them about this. They didn't do this on their own, but I give them a sneak preview of the audio every week, and they try to carve out some CMS Wire stories on that. And this is one of those things that I had thought about before talking to CMS Wire, and had convinced myself it was a terrible idea. Somebody else actually suggested it, and I told them that it was a terrible idea. And then I was having lunch with some local nerd buddies of mine here in town, and I brought this idea up, and I started making fun of it. And one of the guys at the table was like, "No, I think that's a great idea." I'm like, "No, it's a terrible idea. Why would I do a transcript of my podcast?" He's like, "Have you ever been, in a meeting or on the phone or something and saw a headline and wanted to see something, you click it, and the only option that you had was to watch a dumb video?" I'm like, "Oh man, I hate that. I just wish the text to the..." Oh, son of a... So it was kind of that combination. Then the folks from CMS Wire got a hold of me. And so, yeah, we're doing that. Now, we haven't got the timing quite worked out. I published this on Thursday. They published my stories on Friday, so I don't always get the links in my podcast. But we're working. We're figuring it out. But now you can see some of my stories on CMS Wire. So by all means, go out there, click lots of ads, get my stories lots of page views so that the folks at CMS Wire think I'm a big deal. What does next year hold? Well, going to keep doing the old podcast, going to keep covering SharePoint and all those kind of things. PowerShell, for instance, the PowerShell V5, the RTM got released last week. I should have talked about that. Going to be more Microsoft things, more devices, things like that I'm sure that I'm going to talk myself into buying. Going to have more guests. Again, I've got some big names lined up, some important folks in the tech community that will agree to be on my podcast. I just need to get time figured out. So we'll be doing some of that too. So thanks to all of you guys. I don't have the numbers, but thousands of downloads of this thing every year. I'm constantly amazed that you folks give me your time, your most valuable, possession, and listen to this thing. But thanks to everybody that does. We'll do promotions here before I get too teary-eyed on you. So I do have the same self-promotion stuff that I've had before. My Run As Radio episode was launched last week, episode 451, runasradio.com. And then obviously I'll be at SPTechCon, www.sptechcon.com. So again, thank you for listening all year long. I do appreciate it, you guys. There are a lot of times, and tonight was absolutely one of them. You can ask Lori. Her and I are rhyming back and forth. I'm like, man, I don't want to do a show tonight. Can I call in sick? But you guys keep me motivated. The folks in the chat room, we got a good crowd in there tonight. You guys keep me motivated, and I do appreciate it, all of that stuff. Every time somebody comes up to me at a conference and says, hey, I listen to your podcast, I just love it. And I'm glad that I can help. I'm glad I can provide good stuff for you guys. As always, open to your feedback, positive or negative, mostly positive, but, negative also. Things that I could do differently, things I should add, remove, whatever. I would love to hear it. I would like to make this better for you guys. So thank you all. Have a great Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I think Hanukkah's almost over, Kwanzaa, all that kind of stuff. Have a Happy New Year. I'm actually taking vacation. I'm going to be out of town over New Year's, but I will see you guys in 2016. We'll hit the ground running on that first day. Don't tell me what it is. I've got it right in front of me. The 4th. So the next episode, 275, will be on January 4th, 2016. Again, thanks a million, you guys. I love each and every one of you. And I'll talk to you next year. See you later.